Okay, so when it comes to cutting a block this big, I think it's important to just remember that the block itself is 26 inches wide, and just by the size of the blade you can see that the block being 20 by 26, you have just an absolute ton of cutting. The fact that when I draw it, I am not worrying about the cutting, I'm just drawing and sketching it in, means that I end up building for myself possibly 2,000 to 3,000 cuts just to kind of get this image done. And so that being kind of the process, or that being at least what you have ahead of you, the hard part is there's two things. How do you cut fur? And then how do you keep track of what you cut when you have upwards of 3,000 cuts to make and you gotta keep track of the process? Well, when it comes to the process for cutting fur for myself, I actually treat fur no different than when I draw fur. And that is, I understand that fur is layered. So essentially, the fur that's at the top of the head here is underneath the fur here. This fur here lays on top of it, and it basically becomes stacked on itself as they overlay all the way down to the nose. So I start cutting here and work my way down to the nose so that the cut lines appear overlapped. That means, though, that I got to keep in mind the contours of the face, the direction of the fur and where it goes, and the folds and ripples and highs and lows of all of the arches and contours of the anatomy. So just knowing the direction to cut is one thing. Then you have to consider all the folds and where the creases are in the face and where things naturally roll and where hair naturally directionally goes. I usually spend about, I would say, a month really kind of looking at hairline when I started cutting animals to understand kind of the directionality of the face on felines, canids, and things like that. So when I'm going to cut the chin, what I do is I rotate the entire block and I start cutting from the chin, and then I work my way all the way up to the nose, because all this hair is laying on top of the hair beneath it. So the hair here is underneath hair here, underneath hair here. So I literally used to draw from the farthest point and work my way to the hair that's the most on top, which is right here. Because then on the face, when you get to here, it has its own layer underneath the eye. And then from the nose, like I said, coming back to the head. So that's how I approach cutting hair. The keeping track part, I usually look at the image as quadrants or areas. So the chin, once I'm done with the chin, I work my way like I did the muzzle on the right first, went to the chin, and I'm working my way up to this part of the muzzle. And then I started with the cub's chin, and then worked my way up the face. And what I'll do is I'll work my way up to the ear, right here, and then I'll work my way this way, and then I'll work from the top of the head down to the nose. And that'll be the process as I go through the block. The block being this big means that I'm looking at probably 100 hours of cutting to get it done right. And you can see that I try when I'm cutting to honor all the lines that were drawn and making sure there's little things in here that you wouldn't necessarily notice unless I point them out. For instance, on the cheek here, there are cut lines very fine like this that are hairs that naturally kind of dip off the face in this ragged look. They're kind of like the scraggly hairs, right? The scraggly hairs of any cub or any animal. They always have a couple scraggly little hairs. So I have to make sure that I include those in the cutting if I want this at all to feel more honest. Okay? So again, hopefully this gives you an idea of how to approach cutting hair the way I do, in case you're interested in giving that a shot. If you have any questions, let me know. My email is on my website, www.jmbart.org, and I'll be happy to help you or give advice in anything, just from my own experience working with animals. Happy cutting!